Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first webinar where we are meeting the Zehut Israel candidates, speaking to you in English, live from their respective homes. In the studio tonight, Aryeh Sonnenberg speaking, and Jeff Cohen is helping us. Jeff is the U.S. Director of Zehut International, actually joining us from New York. He'll be emceeing this evening.
Hello, everyone.
Tonight we have with us Lisa Liel and Gilad Alper. They will be talking to you tonight and answering your questions. Before we do so, in order that we can get their questions out to them, I'd like you all to look for the questions panel on your screen. There should be a way for you to chat in and say hi to us. So why don't you do that right now? Why don't you see if you can find that panel and tell me which city you are writing in from. Look for the questions panel on your screen, probably in the lower right of your screen. Okay, great. I see Ruth Esther from Jerusalem. Rafi from Katzrin. Okay, we've covered the north and the center so far. Who's in the south? I know we've got at least one person on the call from the U.S. also. Shia from New York. There you go. Good luck, Moshe, for Prime Minister, Shia writes. Okay, I just want to see that everybody else is able to ask us questions, so please do look for that questions box. While you're looking for it, I'd like to kind of describe to you exactly what's going to be going on in the voting process. Because the voting is a very secure method of internet voting, there's going to be a lot of checks and double checks. The way it's going to happen is basically as follows. You, if you're a voting member, will be receiving, on the day of the vote, which is September 12th, an email as well as an SMS message with a link enabling you to access the voting site. You will only be able to get to that site from that link. Once you get to the site, you'll enter your .zehut number to sign in, and then you will have to verify a few things in order for you to be able to vote. Before you are finished, you will be getting another verification code sent back to your SMS and to your email, and only with that second code will you be able to actually have your vote counted. So you're first going to get an email and an SMS in order to get into the site, and then before your vote is actually going to be counted, you will be getting another SMS or email. The system should walk you through this. It should be pretty clear, but just because it's secure, we want to make sure we're dealing with the people who really have voting rights. There are a lot of checks in there to make sure that you're actually the right people. Okay, fantastic. I see that Chava is also chatting in from Jerusalem. And Chava, you've done that, so you're good. Okay, I think we are about ready. Jeff, I think we can take over. Why don't you introduce our candidates and let's get started.
All right, my name is Jeff Cohen. I'm happy to be joining you from New Jersey right now. I will say good evening to you all. Good afternoon to me. And we're going to start off. We have Gilad Alper and Lisa Liel with us this evening. Gilad, I'm going to ask you to start and give us a quick introduction about you and about why you joined Zehut.
Okay, thanks everyone for attending. I'll make it as short and unboring as I can. I'm an Israeli born and raised. I've spent the last almost 20 years as a financial analyst. I have a BA in economics from Tel Aviv University and an MBA from a university in Norway, which is a different story that you don't want to listen to right now, I guess. I've also co-founded a tech company, actually a Norwegian tech company, and today I work as head of research at a large Israeli investment house, and I'm also a member of the advisory board of the Ministry of Finance. In terms of my views, and I guess that's why I joined Zehut, I'm a liberal, or rather a classical liberal, or as you would call it in the US, I guess a libertarian. So I believe in the, well, I guess the exact term is that I'm actually a minarchist, which means I believe in a very limited state that takes care only of security, defense, law, and what I would like Israel to go through, or the process that I'd like Israel to go through, which is why I joined Zehut, is basically to liberalize the Israeli economy, which means to adopt as much as possible the economic model that is being implemented today in countries like Switzerland or New Zealand, to a lesser extent in places like Australia or Canada. And my belief is that Israel, with its immense intellectual energy and love or appetite for risk, if we actually lessen the role of government and get the politicians and the bureaucracy and regulation and all of that off our backs, Israel can become very quickly a very wealthy country and quite likely richer than Switzerland. We do have a number of advantages over Switzerland. That's my history. That's my goal here in 3 sentences.
Thank you, Gilad. Lisa, let's hear from you.
Okay, my name is Lisa Liel. I'm an Ola. I was born and raised in Chicago. I have a BA in economics and Near East studies, and I work as a programmer. I joined Zehut because I've been following Moshe Feiglin for the past about 20 years, and I think that Israel is a mess, and the things that need to be done to fix it. I'm also very strongly libertarian, but I'm coming from more of an ideological place than a pragmatic place. I do think that libertarian policies, getting the government out of individuals' lives, will make things better for everybody. But the reason why I'm in favor of it is because I think it's right. I don't think the government. I don't see any reason why the government has a right to be meddling in our lives, short of keeping one person from beating up another person or robbing them or cheating them. The government doesn't really have a role in people's lives, but I understand that we're not going to get to that immediately. Any changes that we're going to make are going to be gradual because, as Moshe has said in the past, we want evolution, not revolution. I'm hoping that we will get a considerable number of seats in the coming election, whenever that happens. And I would like to be able to be one of the members of Knesset helping this evolution.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to say to our audience, if you have questions for our candidates, whether it's specifically for one particular candidate or for both of them in general, please enter it into the questions panel. And if you would like to, we can open up your microphone and you can ask your question yourself, and I will prompt you as to when you will be coming on. So please enter those questions now. We have some questions that came in earlier, and so I will start off with some of those. One of them was, why are you running in the primaries? But I think you guys have answered that significantly already. Lisa, I know Gilad is an economist, so what do you specifically bring to the party with your experience?
I'm a problem solver. What I do, I'm a programmer. I don't just work on programs that other people have started. I design programs from the bottom up. I create the database level. I create every level. I create a user interface to make things work better for the user, rather than forcing the user to adapt to the program. So my specialty is systems, is sort of a top-down view, looking at the system as a whole. And like to me, all of the issues that are discussed in our platform, and there are many. If you haven't had a chance to read the platform, hopefully the English version will be coming out soon. But they all fit together. Every one of them affects every other one. And what we need to do is we need to work out how best to implement these policies without causing harm to the country, and which could happen if we do everything too fast. And that's my skill set, is figuring out how to accomplish these things and with a minimal number of unanticipated consequences.
Okay, thank you very much. Aryeh, I believe you have a question.
Yeah, it's actually it's a story, a little first and then a question. I was speaking today with Shmuel Sackett, and Shmuel over Shabbat was sitting with a bunch of people at a kiddush, a bunch of young guys, and one of them said to him, "Hey, Shmuel, I really would consider voting for Zehut, but I don't believe that you're really going to pass the threshold, the achuz hachasima." I see Lisa's eyes going there. She's probably heard this every day. And
Yes.
Shmuel said to him, "Well, let me ask you a question. If you did see that we were going to pass, would you vote for Zehut?" And Jeff, we hear your keyboard in the background.
No.
It's okay. And four out of the 5 guys who were there said, of course, if we knew Zehut was going to pass the threshold, we would for sure vote for Zehut, which is quite incredible. So I want to ask both of you, think of the answer to this question. I'd like to hear the answer for you. This is a game of getting into the Knesset, and in order to do so, you know, our polls show that we need at least another 40 or 50,000 people who are going to vote for Zehut in order for us to get past that threshold. And once word gets out that we're past there, we're going to be a snowball. How are you going to get out there? What are the two of you going to do to bring us those 10, 15,000 votes that we need each of you in order for us to get past? Gilad, why don't you go first?
Well, what I'm trying to make sure of all the time is that people understand that Zehut, at least when it comes to the economy, is not revolutionary at all. We're not offering anything new. We're not offering to turn Israel into some kind of a trial field to new, untried economic theories or anything too outlandish. I keep emphasizing all the time, we simply want to adopt, to emulate the economic model, as I said earlier, implemented in Switzerland. And I think that resonates very nicely with many of the people I speak with. And look, when it comes to the geopolitics, it's a little bit tough to get to non-religious people with our platform because, you know, whether it's just a false, you know, feeling of security or it's very short-lived, but currently things are actually okay-ish when it comes to geopolitics, as in there isn't too much terror in Israel, no wars, and it's not very easy to get to people with that message right now. But when it comes to the economy, you know, all of the problems are out there, and they are out there big, as in real estate prices are very high, people work long hours in Israel, they don't make a lot of money, people aren't happy, cars are expensive, taxes are high, the constant interference of government and politicians and bureaucrats in the economy is driving some people crazy. We know that, you know, what happened very recently with Target, right? Target tried to ship stuff to Israel free, and the bureaucracy and customs and, you know, the state in general just ruined that. And this is, I think, the way to get to people, which is to show them how we can, by implementing stuff that is being done in places like Switzerland. Again, I'm bringing this example, you know, endlessly, ad nauseum almost, because it works, and everyone knows Switzerland. And we're trying, I think, again, the point is to show people how we can improve their daily lives significantly, rather easily even, with economic measures that are, you know, implemented in other places. So in short, the short answer is through people's pockets. Hello?
Okay, Lisa?
Yep.
Yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
So I've been writing articles. I know Gilad has also. My articles have been mostly in English. I've translated some and submitted them to newspapers here. What I'm trying to do is get the word out to people. I talk to people in inappropriate, one would think, situations, like people who aren't prepared to hear about politics, but are in a good position to see it. Yesterday, I was at the grocery store, and there was an 81-year-old man standing next to me at the cheese counter, and he was complaining about the prices. So that was an opportunity for me to talk to him about things that we could do to change that, to make prices better, to open up competition, to get rid of some or all of the barriers to imports. And he was interested, and I gave him some information that he could look up online afterwards. I'm trying to get to as many people as I can via Facebook, friends of friends, Twitter as well. But that's the main thing. People want to know that the changes can be made. People are very cynical about it. The first thing that this 81-year-old guy said to me was, "You can't change things here." So I talked to him about that, and now he believes that it might be possible.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Jeff, you want to go over for the next question?
Yes, I do. Actually, we have Shia Landa on the line, and I'm going to open up his mic if I can, although he has self-muted here.
Hi, everyone.
There he is. Go ahead, Shia.
How are you? Number one, I want to wish everyone good luck, and I hope for the upcoming elections we're going to be able to enter the Knesset. And I wish good luck to Gilad and Lisa and everybody in the Zehut party as well.
Thank you.
My question is, according to the poll that came out recently that said that they're getting 2.5 mandates or whatever it was, what is the strategy to be able to receive the additional, 40,000 votes to be able to enter the Knesset, besides for social media and all that, to be able to get the word out more throughout the country, and all that?
Gilad, you want to start out with that?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. What is it that we need to do to get those extra 50,000 votes?
Yes, to be able to get the word out. The people should hear more about Zehut
Okay.
and all that.
So firstly, Zehut so far, in terms of a party, in terms of the campaigns that were initiated by Moshe Begin himself and the team around him, was focusing almost solely on geopolitics and only very recently on education. I think nothing has been done so far with regards to the economy, which, again, to be honest, my view is that certainly if you look at the vast majority of Israelis, this is currently what's bothering them. We live in a relatively peaceful times. Again, it could be very short-lived. It could be all an illusion. But in reality, that's the truth right now. No stabbings, or not too many at least. The real problems are economic problems, and we haven't launched a campaign around those issues. So this is the first thing we need to do. Actually, I think this is what we mostly need to do, although that's, I guess, debatable. And not only the economy, of course, I'm talking about social issues in general. I think people don't know, or most people in Israel, the great majority, don't know that we support legalization of cannabis. They don't know that I'm sorry?
That Moshe supported that way back already, right?
Yeah. the thing about Zehut is that we are truly a liberal party in almost any or every aspect of life, and people are completely unaware of that. And when I say people, I mean 90% of Israelis, or 95%. So actually, that fills me with a lot of optimism, because even when currently people are completely ignorant, or almost completely ignorant, of what we actually stand for, when people know what we stand for, which is a lot of things which are very popular in Israel overall, canceling the monopoly of state on, kosher, on the stamp of making stuff kosher, canceling or abolishing the intervention of the state in marriage, and so on and so forth. I think we're going to get possibly a lot more support than we get now. So to answer your question, the first thing we need to do is to actually, launch a campaign, an ongoing campaign around those issues. The second thing we need is money. We need money because, look, I mean, the great thing about social media is if we actually, I believe that, had we done what we're doing now 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had 10,000 votes. 10 years ago, because there was no Facebook and YouTube was not what it is now, and social media by itself is helping us a lot. Can we actually do it only with social media? Can we do it without the billboards and traditional TV and all of that? Possibly, but I wouldn't like to try. I would like to make sure that we actually get the funding to do campaigning the old-fashioned way. And then with social media and the old-fashioned way of campaigning, I think we have a much better chance. But we need money.
Right. Thank you very much. It's like in America, Donald Trump, he basically won the election by social media, more or less, without any, his media was his Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah. There's one very big difference. Trump was the candidate of the Republican Party. There was no way to get him off the national TV. Well, firstly, he was fantastic for ratings, right? Because he was crazy. Arguably still is. Or even more so. But the point is, the only two parties in the US, there was no way, even if they wanted to boycott Trump, there was no way to do it. In Israel, you can do it. You can boycott Zehut. You can make, look, one of the issues with Zehut is that we really do go against the establishment in Israel. We go against the state. We go against the control of the state on in TV, on media overall, on many institutions. So there are many reasons for the people, for the establishment to try and block us. So whatever. But then on the other hand, no one says no to money. So if we have enough money to buy ads and put up billboards, that's going to help us. But
sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Right now, most of the entrenched interests don't really see us. They don't realize that we are sort of a threat to them. Once we start campaigning, because we haven't actually started campaigning at all, that 2.5% or 2.5 seats was miraculous for a party that hasn't even campaigned. Once they start to really understand what we're bringing, we're going to get a lot of pushback, and that's good and that's bad. It's going to make things a little more difficult along the lines of the media, but there are people in Israel who who favor people who are being abused by the media. So that's a possibility. Also, bear in mind that the 2.5 seats that poll gave us, there's a very small percentage of people who had actually heard of the Zehut Party. If you focus just on those, we actually got 21% of those saying that they will vote for Zehut no matter what, and more who say that they'll vote for Zehut if they're sure that Zehut's going to get in, which I think that once the campaign starts, they're going to see pretty quickly that that's the case. Another issue, by the way, about contacting people is and I've tried this a little bit myself just as an experiment, is going to people who are coming out of government offices and standing there with information, because when people are coming out of those offices, that's when they're really upset.
You're an
Right?
ambulance chaser, Lisa.
Yes, absolutely. Shameless, shameless. But that's where you get people. You get people at the cheese counter when they're complaining about the price. You get people outside Bituach Leumi and outside the licensing authority who have just gone through a crazy wait and then dealing with bureaucrats and chasing forms from here to there. People don't like that, and if they feel that there's a possibility that they won't have to do that anymore, that's attractive to them.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Shia, for the question. I have a question here from Ruth Esther Fine, and she says, how will you make Israel a Jewish state without offending the secular population and trampling on their individual rights? Lisa, why don't we start with you?
That's actually part of our goal. We don't see the distinction between religious and secular to be a helpful one. Jews in Israel keep varying degrees of mitzvot. The very small minority here are people who are completely secular and opposed to Judaism at all. The vast majority of people who consider themselves non-religious they fast on Yom Kippur, they circumcise their children, they may not keep Shabbat fully the way religious Jews do, but they still do, and they still have a connection. I think actually by taking the rabbinate out of the equation in terms of life cycle events, and kashrut, marriage, divorce, burial, brit milah, all of these things, what we want to do is we want to have the rabbinate, create standards, possibly more than one standard for each thing, so that people have their choice of, a regular standard or a Mahadran standard or so forth, and people will have the option of going there. One of the reasons why I think this will help is not only because people hate being forced. Everybody hates being forced. As Moshe has pointed out in the past, and as it says in our platform, if we were to pass a law in Israel requiring people to circumcise their sons, we would, within a month, we would probably have the largest anti-circumcision group on the planet. But we don't do that, and people go ahead and they do it anyhow because people, and especially Jews, do not like to be pushed. So the idea is that if we can stop them from feeling pushed, more people will come to Judaism, will come to more of the mitzvot, will find it personally fulfilling themselves, and will choose it. But in addition to that, the rabbinut itself, right now, it's not very customer friendly. They don't have to be. They have a forced audience. They have a forced clientele. If you want to get married, and you have a Jewish wedding, that you have to go through them. So they don't have any incentive to be nice, really. Not that there aren't people in the rabbinut who are nice, but as a rule, they have no incentive for it. If people have to compete for being able to provide religious services, they will have to be nicer to people, and people will appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Gilad, you have something to add as well? Would you
Yeah,
like
I'm just thinking about an old song by Sting called "If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free." So I think it applies here. I mean, if you really want people to, embrace Jewish values or Jewish lifestyle, then the best way to achieve that is by letting them choose. If you force it upon them, exactly like Lisa said, you're just going to create a lot of antagonism.
All right, thank you. I have another question here from Sarah. Sarah, I think it's Rodenstein. It says, libertarianism is a very new and unknown concept for many Israelis. How will you explain the value of limited government to such a historically socialist country where people are used to turning to big government for solutions? Gilad, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, firstly, I would, as an Israeli, refrain from the use of the word libertarian because, firstly, to be honest, in Hebrew, it has a strange sound. I'd stick to liberal, which, as you know, in Israel means actually libertarian.
Right.
It also has some positive connotation in Israel. Liberal in Israel is considered good for, which is good. But look, one of the reasons I keep mentioning Switzerland and both countries is that I don't think that in many cases it's constructive to use terms, like liberal, libertarian, minarchism, even capitalism. All of those terms are, often misunderstood and sometimes a little bit, they create some resentment in some cases. So what I prefer always to do is to use examples. When I mean example is to say, look, this is what all of the richest countries in the world do. Richest countries meaning, Canada, Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Switzerland, New Zealand, Ireland, and those countries. This is what they do when it comes to, trade policies, taxes, regulations, the way the government or the state operate within the local market. And therefore, if Israel wants to become as rich as those countries, doesn't it make sense to do exactly what they do? Because the interesting thing when you look at those rich, free countries, they have almost nothing in common, right? Some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them have natural resources, some of them don't. Some of them are from the Anglo-Saxon or the Anglo or American traditions. Some of them, like Switzerland or Singapore, a little bit less. So there's nothing that that is common to them other than having a free economy. So when you put it in those terms, it's a little bit hard to argue, and then people have to resort to making stupid arguments. And I'm saying that from my experience on Facebook, right? People start to say, "Oh, Switzerland isn't really free," and "Oh, you have a state welfare system also in Singapore," and those are arguments that are very easy to deal with. So again, when you put things in very simple, I wouldn't say simplistic, but in very obvious terms, in ways that just show you how we can have an easy life or a prosperous life as those countries do, it works. Now, also, I don't want to speak too much, but I want to give Lisa time, but look, there's a and I actually spoke about that previously, there's a great short YouTube with Milton Friedman after visiting Israel in the 80s to try and advise the government on how to deal with the crisis back then of the 80s, the hyperinflation. And he observed that, look, it's very odd what's going on in Israel because Jews basically had 2,000 years of capitalistic history, as in Jews prospered always in countries that were relatively free, in industries and in sectors that were not controlled by government. And then they came to Israel and they became a bunch of socialists. So I think his point was that it's not natural for Jews to be socialists. It's not natural for us to rely, kowtow, whatever, to government and to the state. So I hope that he was right. And maybe you just need someone like Zehut to open the floodgates. I mean, who knows? Maybe.
All right, Lisa.
I agree with Gilad about the need to use examples. Some of the examples we can even use are local ones. One of the common examples we use is for when we're trying to discuss the need for vouchers in education and how that would work. We already have a system of vouchers for childbirth. Here in Israel, when you go to give birth, you're given a voucher by the National Insurance Institute, and you can redeem that voucher at any hospital you like. From what I'm told from people who lived here earlier, maternity wards were like the Gulag. They were not friendly places. They were awful. And today they are, because hospitals have to compete for your vouchers. They have improved them vastly. They have made them beautiful. They have made them user-friendly. They've done everything that they can to get your money. As things go on, as we manage to change things, every little thing will point out to people how that was the result of our policies, because there's an expression, nothing succeeds like success. And it's true. People, you can explain to them the mechanics all you want, but what they want to do is they want to see, has this worked before? Is this working now? And I'm confident that if we start the process of freeing up the economy, freeing up imports, freeing up standards, that the majority of Israelis will start to look at that and say, well, that worked. Maybe we should keep going that way. In addition, we have a lot of non-economic issues, security issues, which a lot of people feel like can never be solved. I've seen articles recently where people are literally, they're arguing that the best idea is to just stop worrying about it and just deal with things on a day-to-day basis and let everything go and just keep living this bizarre world where the people around us want to murder us. Once we start achieving results in that area as well, that will give us more street cred, so to speak. People will say, well, Zehut knew what they were talking about there. Maybe they know what they're talking about here.
Great, thank you. The next question comes from Hava Hope, and she's going to ask it herself. Go ahead, Hava.
Hi. So the one thing we know about Netanyahu is he is the consummate political survivor. When he was faced with a challenge from Bennett, he basically sidelined Bennett in the Knesset. When he was faced with an internal challenge in Likud from Moshe Feiglin, he managed to basically sideline Moshe Feiglin. How do you imagine that Zehut is going to be able to wrest any seats away from Likud?
I think a lot of people are very angry about what the Likud has done. Every time they've voted for the Likud to get right-wing policies, and every time they've gotten left-wing policies. And I think that one common thing to Israelis is nobody likes to be a friar. Nobody wants to be a sucker. And Netanyahu has made suckers out of the entire country. Well, certainly out of everybody who voted for the Likud. He definitely has a core of people who will never be pulled away from him, sort of a cult of personality thing. But a lot of Likud supporters have already changed their allegiance to Zehut. Recently, a well-known author and performer publicly left Likud for Zehut, and there were articles in all of the newspapers. And that's going to happen more and more as time goes on. But in addition, we're not only going to take votes from Likud. We're going to be pulling votes from places that you wouldn't expect. Votes from Likud and Bayit Yehudi, people who saw how Likud and Bayit Yehudi destroyed Amona, who are reminded how the Likud was what destroyed Gush Katif back in 2005. The idea that there is an option, an alternative, will appeal to a lot of people. But in addition, there are people on the left who like our policies. Our head of the man who runs our branch in Eilat used to run the branch of Meretz in Eilat, the far left party. A lot of what we want, there are people on the left who are on the left because they want freedom, and they haven't gotten it. But they have been led to believe that the left is the way to get freedom. Now that they're seeing that the left might not be the way to get freedom, that what we're offering will give them what they want in ways that have been proven in other countries, as Gilad pointed out, and in some cases have already been proven in our country. I think that's where we're going to get a lot. No question, Bibi's going to try and take us down once he realizes the kind of strength that we're going to be bringing. But it's going to take a little while because right now I don't think he takes us seriously. And that's
Thank
good.
you, Lisa. Gilad?
Yeah, look, I mean, we can see very easily what Netanyahu has been doing over the last couple of days. I think only today or yesterday, he was touring South Tel Aviv, pretending to actually care about the plight of the local population because of the immigration. And all of a sudden, he remembered what's going on in South Tel Aviv. 2 days ago, he also, approached some of the settlers in Judea and Samaria, also pretending to all of a sudden, wanting to build there after not building or doing anything for the past I don't know how many years. So he's a fantastic politician. That's that's pretty clear. Lousy prime minister, but fantastic politician. So look, I mean, there's an interesting question which I'm not sure of. What's the best background to go to national elections for Zehut? Only from the selfish point of view of Zehut, not for the state, but just for Zehut, just selfishly. Do we want to go to general elections when on the background we have a major crisis, a major geopolitical crisis? Or do we want to go to the elections when things are as relatively peaceful as they are now? My sense is that we prefer things to be peaceful, because if we have a lot of terrorism and whatever and pressure from the Americans and who knows what, some people may argue that then someone is hard-nosed as Zehut when it comes to geopolitics is going to attract people, voters. But then on the other hand, you can say that people, when they're scared, they stick with what they know best, rather than starting or trying something new. So my guess, again, it's better to live in peaceful times as we do now, but with the economy doing very badly. Well, doing very badly, not necessarily when you look at national statistics, but going very badly when it comes to actually the welfare of the ordinary citizen. And I think that as the years, over the next year, next 2 years, I mean, my guess is that things are actually going to get worse. And again, from a completely selfish point of view, that's good for us. And that's another good reason why to put a lot of emphasis on economic issues.
All right, great. I know I'm just a moderator here, but I'm going to chime in on that one. As one of the reasons that we got out of the Likud was because Netanyahu had so much power over us and so much power over all of the inner workings of the Likud. So being outside of the Likud will work very well for us. And our candidates here will help us quite a bit. Okay, as for the next...
I'd like to say something first, Jeff.
Go ahead.
First of all, we're going to have to wind down soon, so I hope we have maybe our last or the second to the last question. I just want to remind everyone on the call, everyone who's a voting member who's on the call with us, when it comes to the elections, you will have 6 points to allocate to the candidates. You can choose to give your 6 points to one candidate, or you can choose to spread those 6 points amongst 6 candidates, or any way you'd like to, obviously in full points, not fractions. You're going to have to decide who is most important, who's most important for you, for Zehut to see in our Knesset list. After that first round of primaries, the 15 people who come out at the top of that list, out of our 20-something candidates, they will then go on to round 2. And that's actually going to be a much more exciting time than what we're in right now, because when round 2 happens, we're not just Moshe Feiglin's party anymore. We're a party of Moshe Feiglin and 15 other contenders for the Knesset. and it's going to be a huge a lever of power and people going out to influence across the country, because we're then going into open elections for all Israeli citizens. So where today it may just be that Moshe Feiglin and maybe one or two of our other candidates are being interviewed on the media, by the time that we've got these 15 people out, we're going to see a lot more action on those people. They're going to be at Knesset groups all over the country, because they want people to vote for them, because then they're going to have to win their position in the Likud list. And I think that's when the big actions are going to start, obviously, until the elections actually are announced. And I'm looking forward to that.
Well, for those of you who may not have seen the video yet, there is a little more than 2-minute video on the Zehut primaries. I put the link on the chat so everyone can see. So after we're done here, if you'd like, you can go check that out. Let me see if we have another question here. We do have a question as for both of you. It says, as a member of Knesset from Zehut, what would you see as your obligations to those who support you? Let's start with Lisa.
I have a thing about this. I believe that the citizen is essentially the customer. I think that the government is appallingly not customer friendly, and that my obligation as a member of Knesset will be to be responsive to the people who voted for me, to be responsive also to the people who didn't vote for me to the extent that I can. What I would like to do is actually create a department out of pieces of current ministries that will have as its sole responsibility to serve as a customer service department for the citizens of the State of Israel, so that if somebody is getting the runaround between one ministry and another, that they'll be able to go to this customer service department and have things taken care of. I can't think of anything. I mean, we have a lot of national problems that need to be fixed, but people need to feel like they're being listened to, and people don't. And there's a reason they don't feel like they're being listened to, because they're not being listened to. There's no constituency, there's no idea of constituency here in Israel. Nobody feels beholden to those who voted for them because they can't exactly recall them. And that is one of my highest priorities, is going to be to make sure that if somebody needs something from the government, that they are able to, that they have somebody that they can talk to.
All right, great. Gilad?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously I'd like to further my liberal agenda as much as I can, but there's a huge difference in how you do that depending on what is going to be the role of Zehut in the Knesset. I mean, are we going to be part of the opposition, coalition? I mean, it all obviously depends on our situation, but you know, if we take two very disparate positions, let's say we are, you know, a meaningless power in the opposition, or we're very strong in the coalition. Let's take those two, look at those two extremes. I mean, if we're in the opposition, then I think, look, I mean, from a purely practical point of view, trying to think what is realistic, I think that what we can do, or what I can do personally, is to use the Knesset as a soapbox, or a bully pulpit, I guess, if you want to call it like that, to, you know, speak about liberalism, speak about the free economy, speak about capitalism in a way that hasn't been talked about or talked about in the Knesset over the last 50 or 60 years. I think it was possibly 50 years ago when we had the last real capitalist in the Knesset. So I think it's just going to be interesting to stand there and say stuff that people haven't heard coming out of the Knesset for many decades. That's going to be, if anything, it's going to be just interesting. Now, if you look at the other extreme, which is we're a powerful force inside the inside the coalition, and let's even fantasize a little bit more and think that we actually can have the office of the Minister of Finance. Then the number one thing that I would like to do is to drop all barriers to trade. I think that's the one biggest impediment to economic growth and prosperity and welfare that we have in Israel, because once you abolish tariffs and quotas and all of the bureaucracy that currently blocks trade, once you do that, you immediately have the cost of living coming down, but then also you expose local industry to competition from overseas. And that's the number one problem that we have in Israel, which is that all of the local industry, basically everything other than high tech, is not exposed to competition and extremely inefficient. Productivity is low and salaries are low. So that's what I would like to do if we actually have the power to do it. If not, as I said, if we were the opposition, we're just going to talk a lot. I don't think, again, realistically, we're going to be able to do much more than that. But that's not a bad thing because, again, I think that the state of the economy in Israel, partly because of what's happening overseas, is not improving. And if we can actually be the voice, the one single voice that speaks about how to solve the issues, while everyone else is, I hope, clearly to everyone is doing exactly what they've done, forever, we are going to come out a lot stronger in the next elections. But we'll have to be patient.
If I can add one thing, not as an individual policy, but I think that people need to see that we're honest, that we don't compromise on our values, that if we say we're going to do something, that we do it, that if we say we're going to try and do something, that they can see us trying to do it. I know I've heard over the last couple of weeks alone, I've heard dozens of people tell me that you can't be a politician and be honest. We need to show them that that's not true, that it's possible to be part of the government and not be a cheat.
All right, thank you very much. We have, Aryeh has one more question that we're going to take. Unfortunately, we do have a few more coming in, but we're only going to be able to take whatever Aryeh has on his plate right now.
Right, I've got a question of my own for Gilad, and then I'm going to get to Ruth Esther. Gilad, everything you're saying about the economy sounds great, but we know that the Israeli economy is run by a very small amount of very, very powerful people. How are we possibly going to get any of the things that you've said done? And you've got 40 seconds to answer the question.
The great thing about what I offer to do, which is to drop trade barriers, is the one big capitalist or free market policy that I think enjoys the support of big parts of the public and even the the media. We can speak about regulation, and then we're going to have some objections, and we can speak about taxes, and that's going to be impossible because the budget keeps increasing. And those are wars that we can wage only when we're very, very powerful. But actually dropping trade barriers is something that is being accepted by many people as a way to, decrease the cost of living. And that's going to enjoy a lot of support in the public and to some extent in the media, which means it's possible.
Okay, good answer. I'm going to close up right now. Ruth Esther did us a big favor on Friday. She doesn't want me to tell anyone, but she was very helpful to the party when she was on vacation. So I'm going to ask her a question for her. She wants to know what you think about retail stores and businesses being open or closed on Shabbat. I've got a lot of background noise from someone also.
Let's start with Lisa.
Not my fault.
Okay, thank you.
My personal preference is for stores to not be open on Shabbat, but I have a stronger preference for the government to not force that on people. One of the things that Zehut wants to do is make government a little more granular, so that instead of rules being made at the state level or even at the municipal level, that they be able to be made at more of a community level. And what we'd like to see is for communities to be able to make those decisions for themselves. again, I think that it's more likely that people will eventually come to want to keep Shabbat, have a more Shabbat atmosphere if it's not being crammed down their throats. Short, sweet, to the point.
Yeah, yeah. Gilad, anything to say?
Yeah, look, from a practical point of view, I mean, say you're a shop owner and you're renting your space from someone, and in the contract it stipulates that you're not supposed to open your place on Saturday, then don't open the place on Saturday. However, if you own the place, if it's your own private property, then it's not the right of the state or even the municipality to tell you what to do with your place, and you can open it on Saturday. Now, the way these things are going to happen in practice is that obviously it's going to be, separated based on the community, which means that if you live in Tel Aviv and you're surrounded by a secular population, that then it makes economic sense to have the place open on Saturday. However, if you have a small grocery and it's in Bnei Brak, then you can forget about opening on Saturday, because then people are going to boycott you during the weekdays. So the character of the population is going to basically determine what people do with the property. Or in other words, the profit motive is going to basically set everything right. But again, in terms of the principle, it's not the right of the state to tell you what to do with your own private property.
Great, thank you very much.
All
Jeff?
right. I'd just like to say that this webinar is being run by Zehut Anglos in Israel, and that there will be more information coming up about the primaries, about other webinars with other candidates, and beyond. So the last thing I would like to ask the candidates is to just wrap up, give me in 60 seconds or less why we should give you all of or part of our 6 points coming up in the election, in the primaries. Lisa, let's start with you.
Oh, lovely. I think that a lot of our candidates have specialties and that they're very good at. Economists, physicists. I'm not a specialist. I think that we need to have at least one person who has dealt with the entire platform and is looking at things from a global level. And I think I can be that person.
All right, thank you. Gilad, go ahead. Give us your 60 seconds or less.
I think that the key to get to wide support, or as wide support as possible for us, is to focus or at least deal with the economic issues and to some extent the social issues, which are really what is bothering the great majority of the Israeli public these days. And I have the right experience, right education, right views, I think, to attract people that want to see those things improve. That's all.
Great. Thank you so much for being here today. I'd like to let all of the attendees know that the webinar will be available for you to watch later if you'd like, or to pass on to others who you think would be interested in it. Aryeh, you want to give your last remarks?
No, you did a great job. Thank you both candidates. Thank you for coming. We'll see you back again on September 12th. And this has been great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.